Oh, you okay? That's okay.
Sometimes when you're going on a big trip, there's so much involved with getting ready that, maybe sometimes.
This is first time we want to do a roll call because again we had several people that are some MIA somewhere, and then we'll do a head count. Hi.
Good morning. As she stated, I'll be your bus driver, and my name is Danielle. So sit back, relax, and enjoy your ride. As it relates to our itinerary, 10:15 we'll do it Lloyd Street Jewish Museum, and then at 11:30 we'll do at, of course, lunch at the Women's Industrial Exchange. From there we'll go 1 p.m. We'll do certainly to see the portrayal of Harriet Tubman at the old Orchard Street Church on Orchard Street in West Baltimore. 2 p.m. we'll have a dramatic presentation of Mother Mary Elizabeth Lang at the St. Mary's Spiritual Center on Packer Street. And then at 3 p.m. We'll board the bus to return to the Women Heritage Center. So that's the itinerary for today. And I'm happy to be with you, and I'm happy to be among, I heard, educators. I spent 32 years in education. I spent several years working with Linda at the State Department of Education. I retired, but I'm still working and still doing some teaching. I'm a consultant with the National Great Blacks and Wax Museum. You can move. I teach African American history and culture there. I teach life skills to an after-school program, middle school girls, teaching them life skills so they can make a life for themselves. So at my age, I'm busy, but it's something that I enjoy doing. And I've traveled around the world because I love all inhabitable continents I've been to. So I can appreciate the kind of things that you're doing. So I do appreciate you, because I say to people, when we talk about Women History Month, whether it's courage, commitment, or character, we're 7 days, 365. That's right. And so it's about who we are and our greatness that we've achieved throughout the world. So I can appreciate that. And the person who portrayed the scientist this morning, Rachel Carson, when I was in college, I had to read her book, Silent Springs. So I'll never forget that. It was wonderful, wonderful. So I got to know a lot about Rachel Carson and her real commitment and challenges that she faced, and did such a wonderful job to inform us about helping us live healthy lives. And so some of the things she spoke of back then, we're just beginning to really appreciate the significance of all of those things. So again, thank you, and I'm so glad that you decided to select Renaissance Productions and Tours, the tour company that I work for when I'm able to do so. Thank you so much. Let's have a good day. I'm going to point out a few sites as we travel along Baltimore Street. And when we think of Baltimore Street, I want to talk about a person that certainly made her mark as a female on Baltimore Street. I'm sure you know of the block. And Blaze Starr was a very significant burlesque stripper on the block. Certainly at the 2 o'clock club. Not only did she start there, but in New Orleans. She did something there. She was born in West Virginia in 1932. And then went to New Orleans. She worked in a donut shop. And after that, she decided that her career was going to take a different turn, and she worked toward that, and went to New Orleans, and was working in the show bar there in New Orleans, and had an interesting affair with the governor. You know about him. So the one unique thing we want to remember about her certainly is that she was the first female who owned, she bought the club here on Baltimore Street, and certainly had a long life. And so her memorabilia is up in the Sex Museum in New York. So that's where you go if you're going to see a lot of her memorabilia. So we can appreciate Blaze for all that she did. She was in 2 movies, one with Paul Newman, and so we can appreciate, the complexity of a woman, yet she really did do what it is that she thought was her career objective at the time. And she's now, I think, 82 years old. But her heydays existed between the late 50s up until 1986. So we can remember and appreciate Blaze Starr.
We didn't get.
We talked about the 2 o'clock club. If you look to my left, you will see Blaze Starr's 2 o'clock club. The block isn't what it used to be. Some of the hot spots are no longer hot spots, but it's still the block. Yeah, it's cooled off a lot. Lloyd Street. When you get to Lloyd Street, you make a right. It's not too far from we're going to be going into this building right here. So this is a good place to park. And then it's all here.
great amount of time.
I just want to say one thing. Deborah has been an incredible friend of the military, so much.
Thank you. We do. I was delighted anytime
Pleasure being here.
she's a good friend. And if I could just introduce, I just saw our executive director, Marvin Pinker, try to sneak in, but I'm going to anyway, standing in the back. So I understand you are spending a long day today touring Baltimore and seeing sites that have interest to women's history, and certainly I'm delighted that you opted to visit us. I mean, our mission is really to tell a much broader story of Jewish life here in Maryland, but certainly women are a key part of that story as well. When you walked in the door, I'm not sure if you know this, there's a statue, there's a bust of a very important woman who I'd like to just start and take a moment to talk about, Henrietta Zold, before we go any further, because when you talk about Jewish contributions to not only to our country, but even on a more global stage, Henrietta Zold is really one of the most important for people, male or female, that I can speak of, and we're very proud to be able to call her a Baltimorean. Henrietta was born in 1860. She was born here in Baltimore. She was the daughter of a very prominent rabbi, Rabbi Benjamin Zold, who was the rabbi at Temple Ohad Shalom, which is still a congregation that's in existence here in the Pikeville area today. And she was very privileged as the oldest daughter in the family, and there were no boys. I believe there were about 5 other girls. Her father encouraged her to receive an education, and she received an education that not many women at that time did. And she used her education to really found many very important organizations, one of which it was a very important institution called the Night School for Russian immigrants that was located right around the corner, and I'm not sure which way your bus is going when you leave here, but on Baltimore Street. This was one of the first of its kind in the country. She was very concerned with the plight of Eastern European immigrants who were arriving in Baltimore in mass, en masse in the late 1800s. And not just Jewish immigrants, but these were immigrants who were escaping from, all kinds of bad economic circumstances and wars, who were coming to America in search for a better life, and they came here with nothing. And she, one of the things that she wanted to do was try to provide an education for a lot of these people. So they came here and they attended night classes while they worked during the day, where they learned important skills like how to read and how to speak English. So that was one of the first things that she dedicated her life to. And then she had the opportunity to visit Palestine. I believe she went about 1909. And when she went, she found herself very concerned by the living conditions of people living in Palestine at the time, and particularly the state of healthcare, which was really non-existent. So she came back from that visit completely transformed with this idea that she wanted to do something to help create a Jewish state in Palestine, and also to help raise the living standards of people living there. So she founded an organization in 1912, a very important women's organization called Hadassah, that many of you may be familiar with. It's still one of the most preeminent Jewish women's organizations in existence today. And there are chapters all over the country, and this organization was started by Henrietta Zold. Eventually, she moved to Palestine, where she helped to found the Hadassah Hospital, which is still a very important medical center in Israel today. And she dedicated the rest of her life to improving healthcare in Palestine. And also, she, in later years, dedicated her life to helping refugees, children. She helped found the Youth Aliyah movement that helped resettle children from Europe in the 1930s in Palestine. And unfortunately, she died before the state of Israel was founded, but she's buried in the Mount of Olives in Israel, and so it's possible to visit her today. So I did want to take some time. We're very fortunate in our museum to have several things from her that are part of our collections that are right now in our storage. So she's an important part of the story that we tell here at the JMS. Are any questions before we get started? Anything? Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to take just a little bit of time here inside the museum to look at an exhibition that we have called Voices of Lombard Street, which tells a very important story that is really central to why we're here. Although it's hard to imagine when you came through the bus today, this neighborhood it was really vital to the foundation of Baltimore's Jewish community. This was a thriving community beginning in the mid-1800s that really grew with the arrival of Eastern European Jews in the later 1800s. And Lombard Street, which I'm sure some of you are familiar with, the Jewish delis that still survive, was really the hub of the commercial district. So this exhibition, Voices of Lombard Street, takes a look at what neighborhood life was like, looking at home life and some of the businesses on Lombard Street. But it really even takes the story beyond what happened when most of the Jews left this neighborhood in the mid-1900s and searched for bigger homes out in the suburbs, and how the neighborhood went through some decline in the 1940s, 1950s, 1960s, 1970s. And in the past, 10 to 15 years has really started to come to life again. So it's a real story of change and evolution. And the idea of voices is also something that's very important. And if you look around through the exhibition, you'll see there are lots of first-person quotes. Our museum is really dedicated to collecting those stories, those personal stories of people who experience whatever story it is that we're trying to tell. And certainly the stories of women you'll find are clearly represented in this exhibition, whether it's through the record book of one of the most beloved women in the neighborhood, a midwife named Rosa Feinberg, who recorded meticulously each and every birth that she assisted at, and whose notebooks we have here in our collection and are just such wonderful research documents. People come here to look through those notebooks to find relatives, or the stories of women who own businesses on Lombard Street. So I hope you'll take some time to look in there. And then I'm also really excited because we have a new exhibition that's opening on Sunday that we're going to be able to give you a little sneak at. Do we have any Mahjong players in the room? Just a couple. All right, so we have an exhibition that's opening called Project Mahjong that comes to us from the Museum of Jewish Heritage in New York. It's a beautiful exhibition that tells the story of how this traditional Chinese game became such a passionate pastime for women here in the United States when it was brought over in the 1920s, and in particularly how it became a passion for Jewish women. He used it for all kinds of charitable purposes as well as social occasions with their friends. So if you'd like to take a look in there, you can do that as well. Because the galleries are kind of small, it's hard to take it through as a guided tour. So what I would suggest is perhaps we take about 15 minutes, 20 minutes to look through the galleries. I'll be here, I'll kind of station myself throughout if you have any questions. And then I know we also want to make sure we have time to see our historic synagogue, the Lloyd Street Synagogue. So why don't we plan on maybe in like 20 minutes meeting at the front, and we'll go to see the synagogue. So that's fun.
What I do want to say, like everybody who chose my mother's family, they grew up around my
No, it's okay. You don't have to go. Okay.
But this is right here in relation to like so she's ivory. Yeah. So she said, well, I didn't pick it up. So she threw it. You know what, that would have been worth in memory. But she actually, so she left it on the floor.
You had 25 cents?
Yeah, this is that's not 25 cents anymore.
That's double sand. Oh, okay. Double sand. Fancy place. Okay, I got you. Oh, that's her fault. And the house that she bought is her fault.
They were stone.
Well, this is what I remember. No, because we come down here with chicken. I used to come down here with my chicken. school all day long.
Sure, you lived here. Yeah. You didn't know any different?
Do you want to say a few words?
I thought that it was much earlier than 55. I thought it was in the 40s when they built these. This was the
I'm just so
riots.
glad I finally got here. I feel guilty having lived in Baltimore my whole life almost and having never been here before. So I want to thank the center and this trip today for the opportunity to actually come see these wonderful exhibits.
Yeah, isn't that cute?
My daughter Brooke is running for delegate in District 46, which includes this area. And her office is actually in the old building on Bond and Fleet that was where the synagogue, before they built the synagogue across the street. It's where the Jewish community gathered.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. I think, what did you say?
Did you want to say something, Kate? No?
Oh, it was it. Was it?
I said a lot earlier, so I got you on tape a lot earlier. That was great.
Hi, yeah, I'm Barb Carter, and I used to live in Hamden in Baltimore City. And yes, I'm very sorry that I never visited when I was still in the city. And Baltimore was good to me, and I am so glad to see the development that has developed, because this is really, really beautiful. And it also helps because as a snowbird, I am in a Christian in a Jewish community in South Florida. And so what I am learning here gives me a better understanding of the ladies that I frequently associate with down in South Baltimore. And this is just really, really lovely. They do have a Hadassah group down there, and now I know a little bit about the history that I can share with them when I return. So highly recommend this tour, and this tour that was supported by the Women's Historical Society is just wonderful.
Okay, now let me cut you and just have you say Maryland Women's Heritage Center.
Okay.
Just that's all you need. All right, I'm Maryland Women's Heritage.
Maryland Women's Heritage Center has really been fantastic setting up this tour. I tell you, even though it's warm down in South Florida, I miss being here and enjoying all the wonderful history that we have here in Baltimore City.
So I'm sorry to hurry you. I think we're gonna, I need to come back, so I wanna make sure we have some time to go to understand a little bit about some of the changes and what we're looking at today, and try to imagine what this place was like 100 years ago when this was a bustling neighborhood. You might have heard Yiddish speaking on the streets, lots of like the clucking of chickens and lots of smells. And try to imagine that this is the back of the neighborhood where we're walking around in. And we're going to go over to see the Lloyd Street Synagogue. So take a look at what the building looks like on the outside, and we'll just get right in and sit and